Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It is lovely to see people back at the museum and enjoying the exhibit. We started talking to Ken and Deborah more than a year ago, so pre-COVID, about doing an exhibit. And then COVID happened, so I hadn't seen the artwork or met them except through Zoom until it arrived, and it did not disappoint. It is always such a privilege to work with artists and to understand where they're coming from and to see their creative process. And these folks are beyond amazing. Let me tell you a little bit about them, and then we're going to do a Q&A. So Deborah Ori began dancing at 7. She definitely has a love of dance, and majored in it at the University of Michigan. Her interest in photography actually began when she suffered a stress fracture in college and started photographing her rehearsals because she could not participate. And she realized that she really loved photography and went on to study it at the International Center of Photography in New York. She worked in publishing for a number of years. She has been the editorial photographer for Self, Martha Stewart Living, and Real Simple magazines, and also the photo editor for House and Garden and Mirabella, so with an extensive publishing background. Her husband, Ken Browar, is also a photographer. Ken grew up in Los Angeles and decided to move to Paris when he was 19, I think on a bit of a lark for 6 months, and he stayed 28 years. He worked extensively in publishing as well, but more for fashion magazines, Elle, Vogue, Marie Claire. He learned about dance when he started photographing dancers, the Paris Opera Ballet in France. And he eventually moved back to New York, and I believe that is when they met and got married, and so we have this partnership now, and the amazing work that came out of it. Tell us all about the genesis of this project and about how it became the New York City Dance Project.
Well, Ken and I were both photographers when we met, and we were obviously doing our own photography, and we thought it would be fun to do a project together. So at the time, our daughters, who are both here, yes, they were studying at American Ballet Theater and dancing in the Nutcracker with them. And they were all in awe of some of the big stars with American Ballet Theater. So for Sarah's birthday, we wanted to decorate her room with a ballet theme. And we looked for the pictures of the stars that she loved and couldn't really find much of the dancers. We were kind of surprised. There were a lot of photographs of Baryshnikov and dancers from my generation, but not so much of the current stars. So Ken thought it would be fun if we photographed them ourselves. The photographs never made them to Sarah's bedroom, but we reached out actually on social media to one of the stars of the American Ballet Theater, Daniil Simkin. And he happens to love photography, so he wrote us right back. And we have a great relationship with him. He's still one of our best friends. And he helped us get the project launched. He sort of asked us who we wanted to photograph, and the next thing we knew, all of American Ballet Theater was at our house. So.
I will eventually talk. She gets tired. I'll give you a little background. So we tried to do photos for Sarah's wall for her birthday, and that never happened. And then we started to shoot these dancers, and they kept on coming. You know, we were the free photographers in Brooklyn. And so we didn't quite know what to do with these photos. I mean, I've never photographed anybody who's been able to move. You know, doing fashion is a completely different animal. So we did an Instagram, when Instagram was starting, we did an Instagram site called NYC Dance Project. And we got a lot of success, and we were actually promoting these artists also. And these artists that never had images of themselves or were able to promote themselves with this. And then that turned into one book. And then what we have up here is the second book, is sort of the sequel of the first book. The first book we undressed the men, and sometimes we put a nice flowy dress on the women. So that's where we are in what was the question?
She was asking about matching the clothing to the dancer. So we, all these dancers, I actually go to see ballet and modern dance all the time. And we had pretty much seen every single one of them perform, or if not, like if they weren't in the country, we'd seen videos of them. And we talked a lot with them about, what their style is, what designers they liked, how they might like to be photographed. And then I spent hours and hours researching fashion and trying to figure out what would be the best and reaching out to designers from all over the world. And I was surprised how people just sent us stuff.
I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and she would have her phone looking at different, couturier people all over the world.
And things would just arrive from Taiwan and Australia and everywhere.
There was a photo upstairs. It's an Iris Van Harpen dress. We actually have 2 of them. One had Velcro on it, so if you got near it, it attacked you. And her dresses are really for museums. She makes dresses out of glass and it's completely unwearable, unless you're Beyonce. And so one day we get this FedEx box like this, and it's a little beat up. And I said, Deborah, there's a box here. Was Copenhagen?
Yeah.
Copenhagen. And I start pulling these dresses out of this box, and I start realizing that each dress is about $30,000. That's when we got insurance. And things started to come that way, and some of the designers never saw their dresses move. And for us, it wasn't photographing the dress, it was photographing an extension of the dancer. So I did my fashion days. And this was such a pleasure because we could put things on people and it would become an extension of them. And we had one dancer who's upstairs, and her name is Charlotte, and she's a very good public. And she had a dress, and the way the Martha Graham Company is that they work with their feet and their hands, and I asked her to push the dress over there, and she took her foot and grabbed it and threw it. And I said, can you do that again? She took her foot, grabbed it, and threw it. So we worked with these incredible, incredible athletes, and the work upstairs is a collaboration between us and the dancer, because without their talent, we wouldn't be able to achieve this kind of quality of images.
So the 6 dancers jumping is pretty much the only one that I knew exactly what I wanted beforehand, and it's a really famous piece of Martha Graham's Of Night Journey. I probably have seen it at least 50 times, and Sarah learned it when she was at the Martha Graham School, and I saw her practicing it over and over again. So there's a Greek chorus in it that does that jump many, many times. And when I saw the piece at New York City Center, I was like, I want that picture. And we happen to be good friends now with the director, Martha Graham, and I said, I have to do the 6 girls doing the night journey. And so that was the only one that we kind of knew. The other pieces were very different. Like we would have a dancer come in and work with them for a while and just kind of give ourselves room to play and explore and work with them for a little bit before we had any expectations of getting a photograph. And then we'd come back and we'd have a coffee and we'd look at the images and decide what direction to go in. And then we kind of just pick 2 or 3 poses and we just refine those. So with most of the dancers, there was no predetermined picture at all.
Also, these photos, Deborah's going to correct me, but they were all done in our living room. So we have a large loft in Brooklyn, and so we had lights permanently attached to the ceiling, and so they would come over, and it would not be a studio situation. They would come into our home, we'd make coffee, and the minute they walked in the door, I shot a lot of celebrities, and I start looking at them, how their hands move and how they talk, and we try to capture that in these images also. It was just a different experience. I mean, the Goff photos that you saw is the only photos that was asked of us. It was a commission for Harper's Bazaar. And when Deborah and I, most of these photos, it was just the 2 of us, or sometimes we had a hair and makeup person who would help. And for the Harper's Bazaar, we had literally 40 people in a rented studio, and I had no idea who was who. I knew anybody who spoke Italian was probably a stylist. And anybody speaking Japanese was the hair person, and we pulled it together. But that was the only commission, and that was probably one of our hardest shoots because it wasn't exactly our vision, but it was interesting. We had a photo editor behind us saying, it doesn't look like the painting, and we kept on saying, we're not painters, we're photographers. So, and the Goff photos were done on a rake stage. And of course, we had just a studio. But between Photoshop and pure chance, I think we pulled it off.
Yeah. So we had thought originally that they were going to be Degas-inspired photos when we got the assignment, and we were very excited. And then they said, no, we want you to recreate these exact Degas photos. So I don't think Ken slept for about 2 weeks trying to figure out how to recreate Degas pictures. But it really worked out. We had a painter who did some sets for us, and like Ken said, there was a huge crew helping us. So it was an incredible experience.
It was the only time in my life in the fashion business, and I've been in it for a long time, where I saw the stylist cut a Gucci dress, put a tutu on Misty, and put the dress over it.
So,
yeah, that's what Ken said, the stages were rigged, and they still are in Paris and in Russia and stuff. And so our dancer friends tell us when they go there to perform, it's just exhausting because the stage, they have to go uphill.
I think doing the book was
Yeah.
was most challenging because we didn't realize it was like giving birth. To do a book, we finally found an editor who was going to accept our book, and we had this vision of a 200-page book, and they had a vision of a 308-page book, and it was due very soon.
Yeah.
So we had a défilé of dancers coming through and deadlines. And
we were literally taking pictures and sending them to the designer that evening because we were on such a tight deadline with the first book. The second book, we had a much clearer idea of what doing a book would be like, and I thought it'd be easier, but it wasn't. Mostly because we were adding the fashion in, and we'd start working with one designer, like we'd start working with Dior, and we get dresses from them that were great, but then we'd realize like we can't have too much Dior, we have to balance it with other designers. So it was just constantly finding, designers and having their clothes move well and look good on people. And
also, my point being a fashion photographer, I didn't want it to look like a 2000 fashion story. So we have a lot of vintage clothes that we got from vintage stores. We sort of begged, borrowed, and stolen from anybody we could to get these dresses.
We can't say what it is quite yet, but we've been in discussion with our publisher, and we're not sure yet. We're going to take a little longer between books than we did last time because we kind of rushed between our first and our second, and then COVID happened to give us a little bit of a break. So that was a little rest we needed to revamp. I think we started the project in 2009, and we probably photographed 200 or 300 dancers, something like that. I think that each book is 300 pages, so I think there's 80 or so dancers in each, and then we have several that we didn't end up using in the books.
One thing that was very helpful is that the dance community is actually a community, and if you have dancers here, performers, you'll understand that all the dancers know each other. If we have a dancer call up and say, we have a friend coming from the Bolshoi, they have a performance until 7 o'clock, and they come over to your house at 8, and they have to be on their plane the next day at 10 o'clock. Yeah. And we're doing shootings like that.
Yeah, we photographed throughout the night more than a few times. Yeah.
I like the classics. I mean, we were very inspired by Irving Penn and Horst, and we like platinum prints and classical prints. And
we were actually, when I met Ken, it was interesting because he had an incredible photography collection at his house, and the first time I came over, I was in such awe of the collection he had because it was all the photographers I loved as well. I would say Irving Penn, Avedon, but we're inspired by things other than photography. We love art, we love cooking and food, and I get inspiration from all kinds of things. So Alexander McQueen had made a dress that was made of real flowers, and as the model walked down the runway, it was dying and falling off of her. And so obviously we couldn't use that one. But we decided to recreate a flower dress, and Ken happened to have a friend who had a flower company. So he was like, yeah, let's do it, and he sent us hundreds and thousands of flowers. And so I knew right away which dancer it would be because she's a beautiful dancer with the Royal Ballet, and her mother is a costume designer who we were friendly with. So we asked her, and she was so excited to create this dress for her daughter. And it was really special because Ken's friend came in, we had a florist, and
Our place never stops.
we literally, we had to make the dress on her. We started out with making it on my daughter, Jenna, because Megan couldn't stand there for 6 hours while we made it. And then we moved it on to Megan. And it took forever. By the time it was finished, it was so heavy and it was dying. And so she did just a few jumps, and that was it.
I think she did 3 jumps. And we had to spray her.
We're spritzing her with water. She was a very good sport. It helped that her mom was there. Well, anyone who's studied at all Martha Graham knows that she talks all about the breath. And you can see when a dancer's about to take a jump, they bend their knees and plie, and then they take a breath before they go. And so when a dancer watches another dancer, if they're improvising, they can tell when they're about to jump or when they're about to move a certain way. So, I mean, I had danced long enough, it was really easy to catch them in the right moment. And the dancers were always happy. They're like, oh, I usually jump a million times and the photographer can't catch it, but they could tell that and then of course Ken, after working with so many dancers, he also got
I had a learning curve because the first photos I think I did with dancers, because we sort of trade off, depends who needs to make the cappuccino or not. And so the first shot I shot of this beautiful dancer, and her hair was coming down. She was coming down, and her hair was beautiful like that. She looked gorgeous, and we showed her the photo on the screen. I was very proud. And she said, "Do you see my feet? Do you see my hand? This is not possible." So I had a long learning curve on curves, on lines of these dancers, and the dresses are really a part of, it's not fashion, it's a part of their lines.
So what kind of camera do you use? What's your process?
We're using a medium format camera, and it's a very slow camera, and it's 1 photo per shot. Mm-hmm. So it's like a click, 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 click. It's a Hasselblad, and working with flash, so motor drives are really not a possibility, because with the motor drive you never get the moment. You get a lot of photos that you have to look through, but it's not the moment. So we sort of learned to get the moment, and working together, we sort of worked as a team and then got it down.
Yeah. I think Hasselblad was a little surprised. They ended up, we've done a lot of work with them, and I think they never thought of their camera as being the kind of camera to shoot something like that. And people usually use Canons or Nikons to shoot more sports. But yeah, that just wasn't our interest.
And then working as a team, like in anything, sometimes you're just off. So if Deborah's shooting and all of a sudden she just can't get it, we'll switch. And I'll shoot and she'll direct. And it really, in the beginning, it was sort of like a competition. She was shooting and I was trying to get a better shot than her. Of course, the best shot was always mine. But it's really interchangeable now. It's really a teamwork, and it's really interchangeable. It's like, no, you shoot. No, you shoot.
Do you have a question?
Yes, when you're photographing, the dancer is obviously in a flow and a movement, and yet the costume is also in a flow and a movement. Do you think the motion of the dancer created the flow of the costume, or were you having to battle the two to get them to come together at the same time?
Sometimes it worked just perfectly, and other times the costume didn't move quite with them. But after a while, they were really good at figuring out how to make it work with movement.
The dancers took a little time to figure out the clothes, like a costume, and they realized after working a little bit, as we were trying to figure out what we're doing, they were able to work the costume and make it work for them.
Luckily, we have wood floors, so they were not sprung, but they're pretty good, not like it's concrete or anything, or tile. And we did put down marley. That was something early on, we were like, we can't have them dance without marley. That was key. So.
My insurance didn't cover it.
Most of the time they're really good at improvising, and we would start with that. We'd be like asking them if they wanted a certain type of music to work with, or a certain type of, movement. Sometimes we'd give them a little bit to work with, but for the most part, we'd let them come up with things. And then once we figured out a pose we all liked, we would change the arms or change where they were looking, or, work like that a little bit more. But we pretty much let them figure out what worked best for their body.
We also had dancers that were very good at jumping, and then we had other dancers that were very good at grounding, and so we sort of took what their best part was.
We had one dancer who literally said, I only jump. My space is in the air.
How many times did it take you to shoot the 6 girls?
Oh, we actually didn't have them for very long because we had like all 6 were on different schedules, so we had a very short overlap, so it didn't take that much. They do that jump so many times in this piece, and they're used to doing it perfectly in unison, so it was just kind of a matter of spacing them just right.
Also, that jump is not a run and jump. It's I don't know what they do. It's like a levitation. Deborah dreaded the male dancers. Getting a flowing dress, whatever, and the male dancers was a lot harder because the women, if the dress didn't fit them, we could improvise. They're in air, they're not wearing shoes sometimes, or it was easy. For the men, it had to fit at some point.
Well, we had a couple men. We put skirts on. It was definitely harder. I think men's fashion is a little bit more limited than women's fashion, but there was, and I guess for me, I was more familiar with women's fashion as a female.
But I had the photos that looked like the Fred Astaire photos upstairs. That's a friend of mine's father's cuts that he brought over in the cane. So, we got things from everywhere. And that was part of the battle. Taking the photos were easy. I did a lot of the lighting, and I was a beauty photographer. And I realized very early that you can't use a light setup. It doesn't work for everybody. You could have a beautiful light on Deborah, and you put someone else there, and just for some reason it doesn't look the same. So we had lights on wheels. So we just scoot around, and if Deborah was shooting, she was really upset with me. I would take a 6-foot umbrella and swing it on the others.
He would be moving the lights sometimes as I was working, and it was a little distracting, but Ken is a master lighter, so I did leave mostly the lighting to him.
It was the photo with Naomi Campbell in Paris, where she left 15 minutes after the shoot. These dancers wouldn't, we worked with these dancers sometimes 4 hours was a sort of a general time frame.
Some of them literally moved in with us. I have to say one missed her flight to Russia and stayed with us for 2 days, and one of them, Danielle Simpkin, stayed with us for 6 weeks after the shoot. So no, they work so hard and they don't give up. They'll keep trying and trying, and we're like, I think you got it. They're like, no, I think I can get better on this. So dancers are a particular breed of people who are incredibly dedicated and hardworking and perfectionists. We can't thank you enough.
The one problem we have with this show is I don't think we're going to find another beautiful space like this museum. I mean, it's just so gorgeous.
And you did an incredible job curating this. And we have to thank everyone at the museum. It's just been really special. And after a long year of COVID, it's just wonderful to see everybody out again and able to celebrate this with us.